now it's digital. And now it's digital. And now it's digital. And these waves have been moving us through the 20th century. And the 21st century is all going to be digital. Marsh McLuhan said it. It's a global village linked together by electricity and light. And we're just lucky. We're the luckiest people that ever lived to be alive at this moment when you can see what's happening. We're finally going to have what McLuhan predicted, a global village.
Hello everyone, and welcome to A Schizo's Guide to the Galaxy podcast, episode 2. I'm here with a friend, Rad. This is Zen speaking. Hello, Rad.
You all right? Thanks for having me on.
No worries, dude. We'll just have a little ramble about things and see where it leads and upload it just to see what people's thoughts are.
Yeah.
So we were just momentarily speaking about human nature, and you were saying how we've got a human nature to be quite destructive and confrontational. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we were saying is, well, evolution. We were hunters, we were gatherers, and I believe that it is part of our human nature to seek conflict because it is also a way for us to drive progress in ourselves. But it is not the whole part of human nature, as we both were aware, because humans can be kind and compassionate. It's just as we've evolved, our tendencies have become more destructive over time. I mean, look at the development of weapons over history. The course of history, they just tend to get more and more powerful, and it leads me to believe sometimes that we are just out to bloody kill each other for whatever reason, whether it's the dislike of a person's skin color or their politics, the favorite color, what brand phone they have. There's always some kind of conflict that prevents us from pulling together to create something. It's hard when I get on a tangent like this to
well, let me stop you there if that's all right. Just to address the first point about our human nature, as I was saying to you before, I haven't got the studies at hand, but I read basically that human nature, its true core, is to be cooperative and compassionate. But it's that our nervous system, our vagus nerve, our nervous system, our primitive parts of our brain, when they're activated through stress and pressure, we go into a fight and flight response. And there's different responses, but the fight and flight response creates a whole series of chemicals and physiological changes in the body. And that stress makes us want a conflict. That stress makes us go into sort of a defensive mode. Either we run, flight, or we fight, which is face the threat. Now, that's a primitive drive, and it goes to it came into evolution from all animals, and especially us humans, that you're walking through the woods, as you said, a tribes person, a hunter-gatherer, collecting berries, and you've got the child with you, and then there's a tiger. Now you've got two options, you've got fight or flight. Now, your body will go into either fight or flight. Now, if it goes into flight, you'll get a whole series of physiological changes happen to make your body and your muscles work so you can run faster and get away faster. Then there'd be a whole range of physiological changes, in fight mode, where your muscles will be stronger and your pain receptors will be less sensitive, so you can fight. Now, that's an ancient response, and if we're trapped in that response, that's when we can get very aggressive towards ourselves and others, and the most simplest of things. And that's, as I was saying in the previous podcast, which you haven't had an opportunity to listen to the old one yet, but I was saying that with back in the tribal days, or the ancient days, when we were living as hunter-gatherers, or however we were living, when it comes to communication, we were tribal. We only had to communicate with those in our tribe. There was a pecking order, and believed to be a pecking order and so on, but there was also the compassionate element. And where we only had to deal with those forms of physical, body language communication and facial expression communication, and what forms of whatever verbal communication we may have had back then, that was our limited communication level. So our brain, for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, we've evolved to have this level of communication, okay? Yeah. And the trouble is, as civilization's gone on, and we started living in bigger cities and towns, especially today, where we're living in a connected world via globalization and communications like the internet and so on, social media, We're communicating every day from the minute we wake up and pick up our phones to the minute we go to sleep. We're communicating with the whole goddamn world pretty much, and wider networks than what we would. And that's detrimental in ways, because we're taking on people's other negativity, we're taking their likes, their dislikes, their fears, and so on. It's being projected into our psyche, it's being projected into our subconscious, what we'll get to in a minute, because that's the subject you brought up. But what I'm trying to say is that our stress levels are naturally more bombarded today, not just through living through the communication networks and seeing everyone's opinions, but also through the just stress of living in day-to-day society. Oh, I've got to pay the bills, I've got to look after children, is there crime on the streets and stuff like that. Now, the thing is, with that constant level of stress, our bodies are constantly kept in a perpetual state of anxiety, even on a subconscious level. We don't experience it, okay? And that's why there's so much addiction, that's why there's so much stress. And when we're kept in that perpetual state of anxiety, our bodies are constantly releasing these chemicals and hormones and physiological changes to be in fight or flight mode. So where we're constantly in fight or flight mode, we're not in our true nature, which I think is more compassionate. And you could argue that as people who want to keep us in that state of mind, we can come back to that in a minute. But what I'm trying to say is that if we are in our natural state, we are more compassionate beings. So when people say it's in our nature to be violent, in our nature to do that, well, then that's an aspect of our nature. I don't think it's a dominant part of our nature. I just think that, for example, you're at work and your boss may say to you, oh, you're going to get a pay cut, or we're going to lay some staff off, or you're not working hard enough. That triggers your fight or flight response, generally, and because you're under threat. You're under threat to provide for your family, you're under threat to provide for yourself. Now, when that triggers your fight or flight response, unlike back in the days of the tiger, you can't just run out the office and you can't punch your boss, because you can't do that. But basically, you're still having the physiological changes of fight or flight. So where we're kept in this constant state of stress, it's affecting our nervous system, and basically that's affecting our subconscious as well, and then that's affecting our conscious mind, that's affecting our thoughts, our actions, and our words.
Which I agree, and we are, with today's level of technology and communication, infinitely more susceptible to being put in a situation where we are triggered, like you say, forced into our fight or fight or flight, whatever it's,
responses.
Mechanism, responses. Now, let me ask, rewind, what we're in 2023, so rewind roughly 550 years to the age of discovery, where we didn't have mass media that we do today, instant communication across the globe, believe it, I can't, it still amazes me today. But anyway, what was the motivation for the Portuguese and the Spanish to just go and murder Central and South America?
Well, I can't truly answer that 100% to a probably satisfactory level, because I don't have the knowledge base to do that. Really. If you're talking about going and destroying the Incans and the Mayans and stuff like that and so on like that, it's just the whole again, coming back to it, we're evolving with these fight and flight mechanisms.
My question
hear me out. It's like we're kept, but if you hear me out, it's like we're kept in this perpetual state, which is affecting our neurology, affecting our psychology, and affecting our, dare I say it, spirit, okay? But there comes a level, a lot of technology and progression does come through the act of warfare. We devise things to destroy each other or to defend ourselves, and a lot of our progress does come from that. And a lot of technology which is developed in the military ends up being watered down, and then for national consumption, general use. But anyway, why did they do that? Well, it's discovery, isn't it? And it's trying to get themselves recognized, it's trying to find new riches. Don't forget the Aztecs and the Incans had a lot of gold, and I know the Spanish wouldn't have known that before they got there, but that's what it was egotistical. It was egotistical gain, egotistical drive.
Sorry, that was just an email coming through. I don't know if you could hear that on the
no worries, don't worry about
background. No, but which I completely agree, with what you're saying, But my question was, how were they manipulated without the technology that we have today? It's very easy
it's a gradual progression. It's a gradual progression.
I understand the gradual progression, but my question is, how were they manipulated in the 1400s and 1400s to do what they did?
Well, like we're
talking about metaphysics and energies and methods of manipulation, and what on that could influence, looking for the right words again, something like that on the scale that it was.
Well, like I said,
You
I'm
know?
not going to repeat myself because I
This
think
is-
viewers get bored of it. But it's a natural progression. When we talk about energies and metaphysics and stuff, I'm not going to go on that level as well, because that's a whole other subject. That's a whole other massive. You can get on that level, but that's then very speculative as well, and it's very depending on what reality tunnel you choose. It depends on what you believe. But
You're right, okay, and what you're okay, that's fair enough. But then you're also saying that we tend to be more, we are in our natural state more compassionate and you know, and kind. So going over to South America in those days and seeing that these people are less technologically advanced than you, we are not threatened. Why did we do what we did?
yeah,
And this comes back to my maybe that some humans tend to be more compassionate in their natural state, and some humans are just bad.
but those humans weren't in a natural state back then. People have not been in a natural state for a long time. Like I tried to say, once we started living in civilizations, you know, started forming civilizations and living close to each other and in bigger groups, we got further and further away from our natural state. What I'm trying to say is, as we're escalating with technology advancing, society advancing, communications advancing, and living in more and more connected worlds and more susceptible to people's stresses and dislikes and fears and hatreds, as a gradual progression, we've got more and more appearingly aggressive to some. Others will dispute that as well if you look at their studies. But what I'm trying to say is that they had kings. You know, whoever was sending them ships out had a quota to meet. They had someone to please when they got back home. They had pressures. Their fight or flight was responsive. The king had pressures from other kings, like we've got pressures with China, Russia, and America today. It's just a progression of that. It's just a progression. So they weren't, just because they didn't have the internet doesn't mean they're in a natural state, because they're living in civilizations.
Not
they're living in hierarchies.
Not what I was suggesting. You know, that's not what I was. My question is how they were manipulated. That is the question. You know, what method did they use? And that is what you said leads me back to being, you know, a positive or a negative energy that influences our actions every day, according to how we are as a base human.
Are you asking how were we manipulated by a metaphysical force?
Pretty much. Well,
I'm
asking what in those days without technology, without technology that we have now, how could something like that occur? And the only answer to me is an energy source.
Well, I disagree with that, but I think you're right at the same time. I do agree with energy sources at play, but I don't agree that that's the only reason. We are biological, neurological, physical entities which have got a whole, you know, evolutionary psychology is trying to go a long way to explain a lot of what our functions and our actions. So you've got to take that into account. But I think the trouble is with psychology and some forms of science, they don't take in the metaphysical as well. Now, it's a massive subject. I'm going to try and keep it as coherent as I can. But the metaphysical side of it is, some people believe in a devil, some people believe in jinn, some people believe in many things, right? But I'm going to come back to my personal experiences or stuff I've looked into. Now, I had the triangle UFO happen to me when I was 18, okay? And that set me off on a quest to try and find out what happened to me. And along that quest, I found a gentleman called Alec Newold, and I was instantly drawn to Alec Newold. He's a gentleman who lived in New Zealand. I think it was in 1989, he went missing for 10 days. And he went missing for 10 days. And to cut a long story short, he was taken. He doesn't see himself as abducted, but he was taken by multi-dimensional extraterrestrial beings, okay? These beings took him away to their dimension, as it were, or their frequency, their density for 10 days. He spent 10 days with them. And they tried to explain a certain subject to him amongst many things, but he said it's too complex to explain. And this was it. And they said, in layman's terms, there is a force surrounding Earth, okay? And the easiest way to describe it is like a form of energetic locus. And it goes from planet to planet, from garden to garden, from dimension to dimension, because it needs energy to survive. And namely, a lot of that energy is fear and negativity, and the frequency, the energy which humans permeate and life forms permeate when they're in a certain state of being and a certain function, okay? Now, these extraterrestrial multidimensional beings presented that this entity is basically, and this is back in 1989, is basically manipulating mankind. to keep us constantly divided, keep us constantly at war, keep us constantly fighting so it can feed off his energy source. And he was also told that they're trying to create a sort of world network where this is constantly going on, where people are kept in a perpetual state of anxiety and fear so that they can feed off this energy. And that's what Alex Newell said. And I've got a lot of reason to, do we believe the extraterrestrial beings? Are they real? I don't know, but that's the metaphysical perception that I had back in the year 2005 from reading his book. Then you've got people like modern gurus like Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle, whatever you want to call him. And he believes that there's a thing, or there's things, energy forms called pain bodies, where there's like sort of like dimensions of like energy where people's different experiences generate into a dimensional energy sort of being or body, he calls them, and that we are sort of like manipulated by those, and we've all got individual ones and there's collective ones as well, not just subconscious but energies. Now, then to come forward to an article I wrote, which was an experience in 2012, and I need to really create a video about that with some imagery so I could try and present it here a bit. But I had a major, what the doctors would call psychotic episode in 2012. But I was shown, I perceived, like, by seeing a whole series of visions and hallucinations and things communicating with me with energy, and just, it was really peculiar. But anyway, it basically told me that, let's just say for example, I'm going to put it in layman's terms as I did in the article. Let's say I create a red pyramid, out of stone.
Yeah.
And I pray to that red pyramid, okay? Now, there is a universal life force which governs all things. I'm not saying it decides what's good and bad, but it's in every, it's like panpsychism, there's a level of consciousness in all things, okay?
I've experienced it.
Okay,
I know that.
We'll come back to that, but if you don't mind, if that's okay, because this is a bit of a tough subject for me to try and explain. Now, we are connected to this force. Some call it God, some call it Chi, some call it Ka, some call it many different things, but this life force permeates throughout all things. But we've got concentrated levels of it coming down to us, to the earth, and going back in a cyclical fashion, okay? But we can project that energy into the real world, like through our actions and our thoughts. And some people believe this is what is behind the phenomenon of synchronicity and manifestation, but I'm not going to touch on that too much. But basically, when we put our conscious energy into something, like, so for example, I create the red pyramid and I pray to the red pyramid. Now, on a multi-dimensional level, there's an energetic red pyramid starting to generate from the conscious energy from the universal life force I'm putting into that red pyramid, okay? Now, if I was to get, say, 5 friends to pray to this red pyramid and say it's going to grant us wishes and things in the future, you know what I mean? Because it's a positive God, it's a positive symbol. The more energy they put into it, on the etheric realm, the energetic realm, this triangle's getting stronger and stronger. The more people who believe in it, the bigger it gets, the stronger the force gets. Now, here's the thing, right? Now, that energy pyramid dimension is actually conscious itself, because it's coming from the universe. So it's going through our filters, through our egos, through our fears, through our desires, through our individual consciousnesses, but it's life force going into another dimension, okay? But because it's being made of multiple different people's consciousnesses and the echoes and the traits of their consciousnesses, it's generating its own consciousness. And to a degree, it'll get to a point where it's like, well, I need to survive, I need more energy, okay? Yeah. So it'll create a feedback loop. So when I'm praying to it, I may get a vision, I may get a feeling, I may get a thought, I may get a quote-unquote hallucination, which confirms to me that I'm in communication with something of a higher realm, okay? Now, the thing is though, it will create these feedback loops, so I give more energy to it. Oh my God, I had this amazing vision that came true. Oh my God, this amazing vision, it clarifies it for me. It opens up my auric field, it opens up my channels where I'm giving more energy to this red pyramid dimension. It's like a feedback loop. So I'm constantly praying to it, I'm constantly worshiping it, giving it more energy, and it's giving me more clarification or more power or more ego, but detaching me from the life force. Now, when I say detach, we can't ever be detached from the life force until we die, I believe. Yeah. But it makes that connection less stronger. It puts us more into our a different state of being, a different state of consciousness, okay? Right? Now, the thing is though, where that conscious pyramid dimension is more aware, it will then say to somebody else who's worshipping it, well, if you started worshipping me as a blue triangle, if you get what my drift, you'll get more energy than people who are praying to the red triangle. Yeah. The sections of people break off and start praying to the blue triangle, because what you've got now, you've got people saying the blue triangle's right, the red triangle's right, and they're generating more energy towards each triangle, but each triangle is basically the same triangle, but in a hierarchical, periodical system. Does that make sense on the dimensional levels?
It does, yeah. It does,
okay, yeah. So that's what I was shown back in 2012. I was shown that religions, many parts, not all, many parts of religions, many parts of things from football teams to clothing brands to celebrities and myths and all kinds of stuff have these dimensions of their own. So there's a simple way of putting it. There's dimensions within dimensions, or as one teacher once told me, there's cogs within cogs. I never got what he meant by that. Maybe he was alluding to something. And what I mean by that is there's many different forms of energy. Like, so when the extraterrestrials told Alec Newell that there's a parasitic energy platform or entity feeding off of humans, there may be, but there may be just a conglomeration of these various forms of dimensions created through human interaction and human worship and human consciousness. Okay, and they're all fighting, they're all vying for their own personal survival, okay, on these different dimensional realms, which is leading to the confrontation on Earth between people, because they're actually attached through feedback loops and connections to their various pyramid realities. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does, because it's exactly how countries are formed and cultures are formed. You have, let's take, for instance, our own island where we live. You have people descended from the same genetics, for maybe lack of a better, terminology, but we've broken off from our core roots to pursue, our cultural identity or our special form of religion or our government's better than your type of government. It's a man, what you say rings true. But it's very difficult for someone who doesn't believe in a metaphysical realm,
100%.
plane of existence. It's hard to explain that to them. You have to be, again, for lack of better terms, touched by it. You have to have an experience. You've told your experience, and while I was always curious, my experience, as you well know, was with DMT. That is.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, we talk about. I grew up in Africa. I grew up in South Africa, and it was they are a very religious country, despite apartheid going on and whatever it was in the time. Remember, this is the late 80s, early 90s. Everybody pretty much, unless they were, because we had a big Indian and Pakistani community over there. If you didn't believe in like Hindu or Muslim, blacks and whites, coloureds, they all believed in Christianity. So I'd grown up with religion, and I then had an experience when my sister died. She was young, she was 2 years old, and I questioned, why would God take her?
Yeah, like you would. I did exactly the same when my grandmother died. I done exactly the same way.
She was 2 years old. She'd been at home 6 months and she passed away. She was born with spina bifida and she died from complications of that. That was my first question. Why would God take an innocent little girl?
Yeah.
And that was my first question of faith. And then as I grew older, I look back on that, because that was a defining moment of my life, losing my sister. It really was. I asked, why would God, if he's responsible for all creation, make a mistake with the most, in his own words, in his own creeds, his most beloved creation? Why would he make a mistake and then allow it to come into being like that?
Yeah.
That was then the loss of my faith. But despite me losing my faith, I didn't lose my faith in, again, sorry, I always say this, lack of a better term, but in a supreme being.
Yeah.
I lost my faith in religion. Because
Okay.
religion tells me that God is perfect, God is almighty, and this is across many religions, and he can do no wrong. So if he can do no wrong, what's my sister. So and that caused a big void in my life for a long time, spiritually, for a long time. I always there was a weight. I never described myself as atheist. I always described myself as agnostic. I just didn't take religion. And then I've met you. Well, a long time ago now, innit? I met you a long time ago, and you opened my mind and then aroused my curiosity into especially sort of like energies, chis. We talked about chakras a lot and how they heal in meditation. And then we moved apart. I met my ex-partner and I moved away. And then I met another friend who's very much like yourself, who then introduced me to other aspects of spirituality and made me look at the world in a very different light, that we shouldn't always accept things for what they are. And then he gave me some DMT.
Right, so just now we got to the DMT, can I stop you there, because I've got to stop the recording, and then we'll start a new. We'll just go on a quick break, everyone, and we're going to come straight back. Okay, thanks, everyone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to part 2 of the podcast. We're here with Rad and Zen, and we're going to speak about some experiences that Rad's gone through, which has opened his eyes up to certain perceptions. Would you like to go ahead, my friend?
Yeah, as I was saying, and as I explained in the previous part of my experiences leading up to, there was one more that I can't actually believe that I forgot, was my first love and probably my only true love, Catherine. She had a lot of childhood trauma, very bad childhood trauma, and that too was the final nail in the coffin of me believing in a traditional God that is benevolent and kind and is infallible. Because how could he allow something like that to a beautiful person? Because as we both know, severe trauma can make people go one of two ways. They can either persevere, overcome, and become strong people, amazing people like yourself, or it can lead to, well, we know where it can lead, we know where
it's very detrimental and sad existence to some people, unfortunately. Especially if they don't get the support networks needed to help them not so much heal but to cope.
That's why, sorry, often a tiny tangent, but that's why The Joker was such a good film. Anyway, so yeah, that was it. And then the void, and then I left South Africa, so I was taken away from her. That hurt me. That really did hurt me. And then met you, as I said. You opened up my eyes, and then met a friend who, after a while of knowing each other and talking to each other and challenging each other, offered me some DMT. And it was like, to sound corny, it was like jacking into the universe itself. It really, really was. I, to be honest, don't know how long it lasted. It won't no more than 10 minutes, but in that 10 minutes, the joy that I felt was unlike any I've ever felt, and that includes having met Catherine. And I'm sorry, even but to me.
And I just want to interrupt you there. I'm not suggesting, and I just want the audience to listen that DMT is a powerful substance. We're not recommending it.
No,
not recommending it at all.
At all.
This is just Rad's experience. We're sharing it. You've got to be very careful with all things you take in your body. All things.
Yeah, you do. But I can't deny that it was the affirmation that there is something there. There is positive and negative energy, because it wasn't all, it wasn't all roses and amazing feelings. There was, in that short space of time, also a profound sadness, from the affirmation of that, there's there is also negative, a profound negativity out there. It made me feel things that I've never felt.
Okay.
that has then caused me to look not only further into these things, but also to look into ourselves and what we are, you know.
Yeah.
And
Could you explain some of the visuals and experiences you had at all? Because I remember you speaking about, is it possible?
yeah,
If it's not possible, don't worry about it.
no, it is. It's just wow. It's a psychedelic, as you might imagine, but it was everything natural.
Or like
Look,
trees, grass,
is like
flowers.
trees. The trees. Well, I was sat in the back garden,
Mm.
and I was sat on the grass, and the grass was alive. It was alive. The tree that, and they still call it Alex's tree to this day. And it was, the tree. I was so transfixed on the tree because I could just, like you see some of these. It looks like it's hard to explain because it's very hard to explain fractals, isn't it? But they look like it looked maybe like paisley, but yeah, it's hard, but it was amazing. And I felt as though I was one with the earth. I could like feel my hands. I remembered and I actually thought I was sinking because the earth just welcomed me. I felt completely at one with this. Is like, my atoms just filling in all their spaces, and the grass and that filling up all the, little spaces in my atoms. I know I saw my friend's wife. She laughed. Her husband made a joke, and she laughed, and I saw the ripples of her laughter going and mixing with the clouds above.
Wow.
Yeah, and the, it made me feel that I'm naturally a positive person.
Yeah.
Because you've known me a long time.
Yeah.
You've known me a long time, and you've known I can be mardy, and I can be aloof, and I can be abrupt.
It got you in connection, dare I say, with your true self, your nature, which I'm trying to discuss, your connection to source and connection to self, bypassing all
Yeah,
traumas and triggers and stresses.
yeah. And yeah, it changed me. It wasn't an immediate effect, and it's probably about, yeah, well, lockdown. So what, 2.5 years ago, lockdown now?
Okay.
That's precisely, it's nearly three, isn't it? Just coming up 3 years. So yeah, we're during that lockdown period, that lockdown summer. I felt it then, and slowly over those 3 years, and we've seen each other quite a bit over those 3 years. You've seen
And
me.
you weren't in England, were you, at the time? You
No,
weren't in England?
no,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. We don't have to discuss where you were, but I just wanted to clarify that you weren't here in the UK at the time.
right. So yeah. Sorry, where was I?
So you were saying the bit. I remember you also said about the building. So it's about natural stuff being
Oh
like.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was another key point. Totally forgot. Yeah. Um, all the man-made structures, like the houses, the fence, the shed, the gates, the car, it was completely alien. Absolutely, completely alien. Like it did not belong there. Like it was a scab, you know.
Okay.
And that we are, in fact, through our relentless drive and our constant source of conflict, damaging ourselves
Okay.
in a subconscious and a metaphysical way, if I'm
Energetic way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that I, for one, it really did trigger a change in my temperament that has been a slow evolution until the beginning of this year. Me finally accepting my circumstances and the things that have happened in my life cannot be changed, that as much as I want them to. And yeah, it's come with a lot of tears, as you well know.
Mm.
It has come with a lot of tears. a lot of tears, as you well know. But it's been the moment, the defining moment so far in my life that has not only changed, it's made me believe that, because I've also had a real struggle with existential nihilism and the point or pointlessness, because we discussed that before, of existence. Why am I here? What is my purpose of being?
So
sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. That's really interesting, and I can relate to some of the things, like seeing the ripples. Like, you haven't listened to my UFO episode I put out today. I've seen ripples, I've seen auras of trees, I felt grass alive directly before the triangle, after the orb came to me. But anyway, what I was going to say is that that's what I think. I mean, I was going to say DMT, for everyone who doesn't know, actually naturally produces in the brain. And I think that's my issue. I have too much of a high dose of it, because there's a lot of people out there saying, don't take antidepressants, don't take antipsychotic medication, it's nulling your pineal gland, it's stopping DMT being released. And I'm not saying that's not true. I am not saying that's not true. And if that is true, that's why I need such things, because my DMT levels are off the chart. That's why I'm, as the doctors call it, got psychosis and hallucinate all the time. But I think that DMT is a natural part of our evolution, and a natural part of our connection to this higher source. And it does make sense in a way that that's why some drugs are illegal, because I believe the powers that be don't want people having these awakenings like what you've had on a constant level.
Yeah.
We'll see through the illusion of everything.
Yes.
But yeah.
Completely and wholeheartedly agree with that. There's certain things, there's stuff that we have made illegal that has, very minimal harm, harmful reactions to us, where we sell things that can kill us, that are proven to kill us, over the counter.
Alcohol. And
well,
cigarettes.
I don't even need to say it, because we know exactly. Yeah, exactly. Alcohol and cigarettes kill more people a year than dope and DMT. I'm not saying that these, drugs are good, because they're not, because there are.
Is that because of availability as well, though? I'd like to add. Is that also because of availability?
Yeah, DMT is not very easy to get. Like, some call it the destiny drug, because when you're not looking for it, it finds you when you need it the most.
Okay.
That's what a lot of people that have had it, and they've all said that. Unless because you can derive it from ayahuasca, is it? So
ayahuasca. Can I come back to that in a minute?
Yeah. So unless you're making it yourself,
yeah,
it comes to you when you need it. And I think, without putting labels or anything, like, the drug knows who to choose.
I need to swat ayahuasca now, because you're triggering me.
Carry on.
So ayahuasca, I'm probably going to get some of this wrong, but I can point you in a direction to Google it yourselves afterwards, after listening to the podcast. But ayahuasca is a plant medicine, they call it, not a drug, a plant medicine, as this class, in Central South America. Okay, it's used by tribal communities who it's very sacred. They don't just pop it and have a bag of crisps. There's whole ceremonies involved, there's whole cleansing rites involved, and things. And you can actually go on ayahuasca retreats today. But going back to its origins of Western medicine, understanding it or finding it, when some doctors, some scientists went into, or botanists or something, went to the rainforests, and they found some tribes who were friendly and would show them around the forest and stuff. They showed them how they made ayahuasca. I think it's two components. There's a bark of a tree, I think it is, and a leaf of a plant, I think. And they've got to use those plants together in combination. Because if they don't use those plants, the effects won't happen to the way in which it's desired. And there are some undesirable effects, like I hear people get diarrhea and vomit and purge toxins out of their body. But the desired effects are the connection with spirit, the connection with higher realms, and the shamans were saying, the wise people of these tribes are saying, that they use this plant to contact the spirit realm. Okay. Now, when the botanists or scientists or whatever they were said, how did you find out to make this? Because we're in the rainforest. There are millions of species of plants.
Yeah,
Millions.
innit?
So to take the combinations of taking that leaf and that bark tree, right, and mix it in that certain way would have taken Western science decades to discover, because they'd had trial and error and trial and error and trial and error and trial and error. So the calculations were ridiculous, okay? So when the botanists, scientists, whatever they were, asked the tribespeople, how did you find out how to do this? And they said, the spirits told us what plants to pick. You can go look this up. It's in a book, which I'll be covering on a later podcast, called The Stargate Conspiracy by Lynn Picknett, I think, and it's Charles Prince, I think. It's definitely Lynn Picknett. And that's an interesting book, but it's not for a subject we're going to talk about now. Mind you, we could talk about it, I suppose, because in that book, they mention Uri Geller when he was working with, I think, either the Americans or the Israeli Secret Service, and he was working on a thing called the Stargate program, where he was working to contact extraterrestrial beings, okay, through channeling and psychic connection. And when they contacted one group of beings, they called themselves the Council of Nine, and they appeared as like bird-headed sort of entities to the channelers and stuff like that. It's all in this book, The Stargate Conspiracy, which mentions ayahuasca near the end of it. But the really interesting thing I found is they called themselves the Council of Nine. Now, going back to Alec Newald, gentleman I speak about in New Zealand, okay, when he got taken to this multi-dimensional planet, from what I remember, if I got this correct, there are 3 main cities, and each city had 3 councillors. Like, you know, not like councillors who run the cities, making a council of 9. So I just found that a really interesting correlation between, you know, Uri Geller, the connections with the Council of 9, and these channeled teachings or channeled messages, along with Alec Newald's book. So I just want to mention now, if you guys are interested in this subject, it's very hard to get hold of Alec Newald's book, I think, but his book is called Co-Evolution. It's Alec Newald, spelled with a C, A-L-E-C Newald, N-E-W-A-L-D. And then the other book is called The Stargate Conspiracy by Lynn Picknett. I think it's Charles Prince as well, actually more available to get. But please check those books out. But yeah, fascinating. And yeah, it's truly fascinating.
Indeed it is. I would just also like to say that, you know, as you well know, that this is just the beginning of my own journey, you know. So I still have a lot to learn. But one thing I will say, after having that experience, that it was, you know, I just knew. And I actually know, yeah, it was instinct. It was or what I would understand as instinct, that there is forces, you know. Yeah. I hope I don't sound like a complete noob, but you know,
I don't sound like me. Nutter.
Deities, whatever you want to call them, there's just, you know, they are there, you know, and we are with them because of the way it flowed through me.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that it's something that you'd have to experience.
So what I'm going to, experience.
It's my equivalent is a lot of people would call it faith. It's the faith that there is some higher purpose somewhere, and that I am a part of it.
Yeah. We're all a part of it, though. That's what I tried to put forward in my videos. Yeah. Like, people say, like, for example, people say they're really proud of me, how far I've come from, how bad I've been in the past, like, I'm well. But if it wasn't for the people who cared for me, if it wasn't for the people who turned up and gave me the right conversations or point me in the right direction, if it wasn't for a couple of psychologists who I not work with to help me, but just work with, you know, and get on with really well. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be progressing, you know, as much as, because I've had my spiritual guidance and my hallucinations and my synchronicities, but I've also had people help me, okay? Now, thing is, they're normal people as far as the world goes. You know, they've gone to college, they've gone to university, they've got degrees, they're doing this job, they're doing that job. What I'm trying to say is everyone is involved in this tapestry of humans evolving. Not everyone has to have a groundbreaking DMT experience. Not everyone has to have a flying triangle come along and fry their brain. We are all chosen. We are all interconnected, interrelated. The universe experiencing itself, consciously evolving to try and get us to a place in which we are not at the moment.
Yeah, we're 1-0, you know.
I
We're
just
one
want to
and
add now as well that I'm going to put a picture of the books I mentioned in the podcast. So if you're just listening, you might want to check the video to see the picture of the books I'm going to put up. So that was Co-Evolution by Alec Newell and The Stargate Conspiracy by Lynn Picknett, and I think Charles Prince, I think.
nothing. Oh,
Well, that was really interesting. I know it's quite a short one, but I mean, we can have plenty more of these conversations. That was really fascinating. We went across some very
I know I just know because obviously we've been friends for years, you know. Yeah, it's as I always says, always thought provoking and interesting when
so.
talking to you.
So on that note, I want to thank Rad for having this conversation with me, and I hope you enjoyed it. So goodbye, everyone from Zen and Rad. Is there anything you want to say to people?
Yeah, just yeah, be kind, as tolerant, you know, and just try to remember that, you know, your kindness will help somebody get through the day a lot better than your negativity would, you know.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rad.
Yeah.
Take care,
Thanks for
everyone.
having me. Yeah, take care. Bye.
Bye.